Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We start today's video with a story of workplace chaos, a strict boss, and geese? That's right. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I took down his entire career. My friend Idris recently shared this wild story from his first job, and I'm still shook. Idris was 17 when he started at this grimy call center. Back home, he has a whole crew of geese in his yard. He's obsessed with them, treats them like pets, and has a favorite named Blinchik, Russian for pancake. He brought a little wallet-sized photo of Blinchik to work just to keep his spirits up in that depressing dump, but his boss Dave saw it and flipped out. Dave had this hardcore rule: no personal items on your desk. It's about professionalism. Meanwhile, his own desk was a trash heap: old mugs, random figurines, even some rusty fish statues. Idris says Dave had these weird tics. He'd go from passive-aggressive whispers to fake nice vibes in a heartbeat. Total oddball. Anyway, Dave clocked the goose photo and went nuclear. He made Idris rip it to shreds in front of everyone, muttering about rule breaking. Idris, just a 17-year-old kid, froze. He had no clue how to stand up for himself back then and just did it. He says he almost cried but held it together so he wouldn't look weak in front of the team. Blinchik's photo was toast, and Dave smirked like he just won something. Idris wasn't letting it slide. Dave wants me to obey? I'll maliciously comply with him. The next day, he rolled in with nothing. No pen, no notepad, no headset. When Dave asked what the deal was, Idris hit him with, "You said no personal items. I'm waiting for the company to hook me up." Dave lost it, but Idris doubled down. "It's your rule." The team jumped in, half of them stopped bringing their stuff too, and the whole operation tanked. Customers were raging on the phones, calls were dropping, and Dave was scrambling to make everyone work normally. Eventually, he caved and mumbled, "Fine, bring what you need, just keep it low-key." Idris came back with a fresh Blinchik photo and slapped it on his desk. Dave didn't say squat. But it gets crazier. A couple of weeks later, Dave tried to fire Idris for insubordination. Idris, now sharper, had recorded the whole no personal items freak out on his phone, legal where we're at, and sent it to HR with a rundown of Dave's hypocrisy. HR didn't axe Dave, but they gave him a slap on the wrist and he chilled out. Then the real bomb hit. Turns out Dave had been skimming cash from the petty box for years. Small grabs, but steady. Idris says he cooked up the rule obsession to keep everyone stressed and off his trail. He'd snag money from the drawer, supposedly for coffee, paper, office junk, and mark it as office needs. He'd snag money from the drawer, supposedly for coffee, paper, office junk, and mark it as office needs. It added up to a hefty chunk, though no one's dropped an exact number. His weird mix of passive-aggressive jabs and over-the-top strictness kept newbies like Idris too spooked to dig deeper. That photo meltdown? Idris figures Dave was just flexing to throw everyone off his scent. Dave got busted when a senior coworker noticed the office expenses weren't lining up. They canned him and later even filed charges. Idris says he's still stoked about how he accidentally took down a crook by playing Dave's own dumb game. Blinchik's still chilling in his yard with the rest of the geese, honking at anyone who steps too close. So Reddit, what's the call? Is Idris the king of payback? Dave screwed himself by getting folks to hate him. I doubt anyone would have noticed the skimming unless it came up in an audit. As for the senior coworker, he may have noticed the discrepancy or simply didn't like Dave and figured he's worth watching for violations and got lucky. And our second story. Enjoy restocking all that. I was at my local supermarket getting ready for a big barbecue with friends. You know the drill: meat piled high, bags of chips, sauces, snacks, and of course plenty of booze to keep the party lively. By the time I rolled my trolley up to the checkout, it was packed to the brim. The total was gonna be steep, but that's what happens when you're feeding and watering a small army. The cashier started scanning everything, and it was all going smoothly until we hit the alcohol. She glanced at me and asked, "Can I see your ID, please?" "Sure," I said, fishing out my driver's license. She looked at it, nodded, and everything seemed fine. Then she turned to my friend standing next to me and asked, "And yours as well?" He blinked. "What? I'm 30. I still need to see ID, she said flatly. Now, my friend is not just obviously over 21. He looks it. Beard, tired eyes, the whole package. But he hadn't brought his wallet. He wasn't even the one paying. I was. I explained, look, I'm the one buying this stuff. You've seen my ID. Why does he need to show his? The cashier gave me that rehearsed policy robot smile. If you're both together and alcohol is being purchased, everyone needs to show ID. I stared at her, trying to process how ridiculous this was. So let me get this straight. You're treating a grown man with crow's feet like he's a teenager trying to sneak beer? Are you ID checking the family at the next till? Because I guarantee the baby in that cart doesn't have ID either. She didn't laugh, didn't even flinch, just repeated, store policy. We went back and forth a few more times. I pointed out how absurd it was, how I was the one paying, how my friend wasn't even touching the booze. None of it mattered. Finally, she gave me my choice. I could buy everything except the alcohol or walk away. She rang up the total, clearly expecting me to cave. That'll be 320 pounds without the alcohol. I smiled, slid my card back into my wallet, and said, no thanks. Then I turned and walked away, leaving the entire trolley's worth of groceries on the conveyor belt. For a split second, I did feel sorry for the poor people behind me who had to wait while the staff sorted through the abandoned shop. But honestly, I was too annoyed to care much. As I reached the door, a manager hustled over, clearly panicked. Sir, please. We can work this out. We don't want to lose your business. I shook my head. If I have to stop at another shop to get half the stuff, I might as well give them all of it. Why reward nonsense policies? And with that, I left, taking my business and my 320 pounds to a store that actually uses common sense. What's going on here? If you buy booze, does everyone in the group need to show ID? Can you just say that you don't know that man? What happens if some stranger walks up and stands next to someone buying booze? Does that mean no one can end up buying booze? And our next story. Karen thought my yard was messy. Now her landscape looks like an apocalypse. I used to live in a quiet southwest desert neighborhood, the kind where most people xeriscape their front yards with gravel, cacti, and a few desert plants. My corner lot was one of the bigger ones, and my front yard was gravel only. No grass, no flower beds, nothing that could easily turn into a jungle. Every weekend, I'd walk the yard and pluck out any new green sprout that dared to break through the rocks. Despite this, I still started getting letters from the HOA saying I had weeds every couple of weeks without fail. The letters didn't make sense. I'd spend extra time combing through my yard after receiving one, and sometimes I couldn't find a single weed. But one thing I did notice was that every time I got a letter, my across-the-street neighbor, Karen, would come outside with her husband and just stand there watching me. They were in their late 70s, retired, and seemed to have made HOA nitpicking their full-time job. One day, while crouched down inspecting the gravel, Karen called out, Karen, you missed a spot. Me, really? Where? Karen, right there. She vaguely waved at my yard like she was blessing it. I walked the entire stretch. She gestured toward nothing. No weeds, just gravel. I finally caught on. Karen was the one filing complaints. After months of this, I gave up on taking it seriously. Instead, whenever a new letter arrived, I'd go out front and dramatically bend down, pretending to pull weeds that didn't exist. Karen and her husband would come outside and stare as if they were catching me in the act of weeding my messy garden. I'd play it up, tossing imaginary weeds into a bucket like I was harvesting crops. That's when inspiration hit me. See, I spend a lot of time hiking in the desert and visiting parks, and in the desert, weeds are plentiful. Hardy little devils that thrive in cracks, gravel, and anywhere you don't want them. I started collecting seeds whenever I came across the right kind of plant. Nothing illegal, just the usual desert weeds. Every evening when I walked my dog, I'd casually drop a handful of seeds in Karen's pristine front yard. Her rock wasn't gravel like mine. She had decorative rock beds and some ground cover plants that made the perfect soil for my little gifts. At first, nothing happened, but after a couple of weeks, little sprouts started popping up. Another week later, her yard was dotted with patches of weeds. Within a month, it looked like a forgotten lot. Karen was furious. I'd see her outside with gardening gloves, muttering to herself as she yanked weeds. Her husband tried spraying weed killer, but desert weeds don't care about Roundup. They just keep coming back. And I didn't let up. Every dog walk, more seeds. Finally, I decided to play their own game. I wrote a formal complaint to the HOA about the unsightly weed infestation across the street. A week later, I got to watch the HOA's own landscaper walking through her yard with a clipboard scribbling notes. Guess whose mailbox started filling with letters then? Karen. The best part, the moment her weed problem began, my letters mysteriously stopped. Apparently, she was too busy trying to keep her own yard in order to keep inventing problems with mine. One afternoon, while I was out front trimming a cactus, Karen stomped across the street and snapped, "Karen, do you know how much time I spend pulling weeds? Hours, every day." I just shrugged. Yeah, it's tough. I guess weeds happen, huh? She glared at me like she knew but couldn't prove anything, then stormed back to her yard. Over the next few months, her yard turned into a rotating battlefield of weeds versus Karen. She couldn't keep up. The HOA letters piled up. Eventually, she had to hire landscapers to strip out part of her yard and relay gravel, which cost her thousands. Meanwhile, I went back to enjoying my weekend weeding sessions, which mostly consisted of sitting on a lawn chair with a beer, waving at her when she looked over. My yard stayed spotless. Hers looked like the desert was trying to reclaim it. Funny thing, after that, Karen stopped watching me, stopped complaining, and the HOA never sent me another letter again. Watching Karen get buried under the very problem she tried to invent for him? That's the kind of karma you can't buy. And our last story. Karen tried to claim my pool as her own. I live in a gated community in Jacksonville, Florida. On paper, it's a nice place. Upper middle class, clean streets, golf carts rolling around, families walking golden retrievers. In reality, it's a breeding ground for Karens. Should have thought of that before buying a house here, but I was 24, a little too optimistic, and just wanted a good spot for me and my dog. A little background. I don't have immediate family anymore, just some distant relatives. My family now is my group of friends. Since most of them still live at home, my place became the hangout spot. They love the pool, the Xbox set up on the porch, and of course, my dog. Everything was going fine until Karen arrived in my life. I came home one Monday to find two kids, maybe 11 and 14, sitting on my back porch, happily playing Xbox like they owned the place. Me. What the hell are you doing here? They froze, stared at me like a deer in the headlights, and bolted out the gate without saying a word. Nothing was missing, no damage done. I figured they were just neighborhood brats messing around, so I let it go. That was my first mistake. That evening, someone pounded on my door like the cops executing a raid. When I opened it, there stood Karen. Bleach blonde bob haircut, fake designer handbag, and an expression like she was auditioning for Judge Judy. Karen, why did you harass my kids today? Are you some kind of pervert? Me. Excuse me? I caught them on my back porch playing Xbox. I told them to leave. Karen, why is that a problem? Gary, the man who used to own your house, let my kids over all the time. You have a nice pool and they love it. Me. Yeah, well, Gary doesn't live here anymore. I do. Keep your kids off my property. I slammed the door in her face. The next few days, I started getting HOA letters, unsightly yard, improper garbage placement, noise complaints. All fake, all from Karen. About a week later, I got home early from work. Guess who was in my pool? Karen's kids, splashing around like it was Disney World. That was the breaking point. I called the HOA president and told her everything. To my surprise, she was understanding. Apparently, Karen had a reputation for this sort of nonsense and had made false complaints before. I told her I was installing cameras and that if I ever caught those kids trespassing again, the police would be called. I wasn't worried about being the bad guy. What worried me was liability. If one of those kids drowned in my pool, I'd be the one getting sued. A few days later, while venting to a friend and one of my father's old business contacts, I mentioned Karen's name. My friend raised an eyebrow. Friend, wait, Karen as in last name? Me. Yeah. Friend, dude, her husband works at your company. I thought he was joking. But no, turns out Karen's husband, let's call him Steve, was a systems analyst in my department. Not just in the same company, but 2 levels below me. I'm the chief information officer, CIO at my firm. Unusual for someone my age, sure, but I earned it. 2 master's degrees, started working in IT at 16, and busted my butt to get here. And suddenly, this woman had been picking fights with her husband's boss's boss? That Saturday, there was a knock on my door. This time it was Steve. Polite, nervous, with Karen in tow. Steve, listen, I just found out about all this. I'm really sorry. I didn't know she'd been letting the kids use your pool or that she came over here like that. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Karen gave me a death glare that could have melted concrete, but Steve nudged her. Karen, sorry for the misunderstanding. Her tone suggested she'd rather be chewing glass. Me, apology accepted. Just make sure it doesn't happen again. I smiled sweetly, knowing full well she hated every second of it. Since then, no more kids in my yard, no more fake HOA complaints. My cameras are up, and Karen hasn't dared push her luck again. Steve still works at the company, and every time I walk past his cubicle, I can't help but notice the way he straightens up, typing faster, avoiding eye contact like his life depends on it. Karen may have thought she could bully the young guy in the neighborhood, but she quickly realized pissing off your husband's boss's boss isn't exactly the smartest strategy. I still enjoy my pool in peace, while my friends and I laugh about the day Karen tried to claim my property like it came with the house. The best part's the twist, that her husband ended up being 2 levels below you at work. That death glare she gave you must have been priceless when she realized her little power trip could jeopardize his career. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.